Hey there, it is Joe Pardavila. Welcome back to Forbes Books Radio and part 2 of my interview with Juan Riboldi, the principal and president at Ascent Advisor. Now, Juan, in part 1 of our chat, I mentioned that you have a new book coming out. It's called Strategic Transformation: How to Deliver What Matters Most. A couple of the chapters I want to talk about, and it's kind of important, especially in what we're going through now, but achieving clarity by working smart is one of the chapters about focus. Right now, clarity and focus, it's tough because we are being inundated with information, whether it's political or science, or the fact that our jobs are transforming and the work from home scenarios become more prevalent. How do people stay focused, and how do you achieve clarity in a time of such disrepair?
That is a great question. And I want to, first of all, acknowledge that the problem you point out is exactly the case. Lack of focus for the last 10 years has been increasingly becoming one of the major sources why smart, good, effective individuals and organizations fail to deliver the desired results. And I have conducted many surveys and studies around that, and even informal workshops, and people identify lack of focus as a primary problem. We all have way too much to do on our plates. There's constant scope creep. The priorities are constantly changing, and the demands keep escalating. Our time is the same, So you put all that together, and people are saying, "Okay, I don't even know how to deal with this." Most of us look at that situation, and if we are not like completely overwhelmed by it and just throw our arms up and go to the beach and call it a day, most people adopt the philosophy of let's just work harder. We'll try to do more. And as we try to do more, we take on everything in, we start checking things off, we expand our work hours, we try to become as efficient as possible and say yes to too many things. As a result of doing that, there are several problems that happen. One is that we ourselves become part of the problem because we create reactionary work for others. We're starting to do a lot of things that may not be critical priorities. And two, we actually burn ourselves out. We try to do too many things. And probably the most important one is that none of these things get done particularly well. So the skill for all of us, and is doable, is to help prioritize and reprioritize constantly what's on our plate so we can stay focused on no more than 3 to 5 things at any given time. And you're saying 3 to 5 things. I have like 10 to 15 on my daily.
Yeah, that's before 10 a.m. I got 3 to 5 things to do.
So the reality is that while we may have 20 tasks to do, we will only be able to do well a very finite number of them. And 3 to 5 is usually the number of what is successfully done well at any given point in time. So when you're trying to juggle more than that, you start decreasing the number of things that you actually accomplish and the quality of what you do. So the point is, you start focusing on those things and move all the other things on a to-do list, and then everything else into a backlog. And the idea is to prioritize your backlog and your to-do list, so at least a third of everything there, you just simply get rid of. You're just simply saying, these things I should not be doing. So what we say no to is probably one of the most valuable things for ourselves and others. When we get comfortable renegotiating expectations with other people about what we're no longer doing or what we are not going to do in the time expected, we relieve ourselves and others from pursuing additional stuff that is not critical at the time.
But hold on there, Juan. No is sort of, it's become a 4-letter word. Nobody wants to hear no. I mean, there's inspirational posts on Instagram about no, and people hang up stuff in dentist's office about no. How do you preach that no is not a bad thing?
The way to say no and still be valued is to say essentially yes twice. So you say yes with an exclamation mark. The idea that you're bringing up or the concept of what you're saying is absolutely right. No, I cannot do it in the time or in their expectations, that we are setting up here, period, full stop. You don't have to explain why not. And then you do a yes with a question mark saying, what if we possibly explore some other ways of doing this, and who would be the best person to get this done? I'll just give you a simple example. I was helping one of my clients launch a website. And in the process of helping them, I found myself dealing with copywriters, with content creators, with subject matter experts, with a legal counsel team that had to verify and vetted everything, and as well as the marketing team that was putting together the website. So coordinating all these complex projects, you find yourself all of a sudden saying, what about this content? Is it ready to publish? Can we move forward? And all of a sudden, someone from the legal team basically targeted what I was saying and said, before these can go live, you need to verify and check all these facts. And this email was directed at me personally. And when I look at the amount of work that this was required, these were hours of detailed work on the content to verify the claims that were made.
That you had to do?
Yeah. So again, because I was facilitating the process, they said, here, this is on your desk now. So the first reaction for me was, I don't have the hours to do this.
Right.
2, I didn't know who else in the team would have the hours to do this. 3, if I go back to the legal counsel and says, no, this is not necessary, that's not going to go very well because you're not even meeting the legal compliance.
Yeah.
So I paused for a while and I thought, how could we say no to the request in a way that I'm still valued and that we can move forward? So I responded to this email saying, thank you for bringing this up. These are very valid points that need to be addressed. I am not the best qualified person to address these points. My role has been to facilitate the project and move this forward, but I don't see myself as an expert in these areas. Who do you think would be the best qualified person and team to do this? Maybe we can have a meeting to address this. So this simple response allow the legal team to feel validated that they were raising some very valid points, but bring the whole team together to realize that the way that we were going about things didn't follow the right process. So not only did we fix the immediate problem that the legal team was bringing up to attention, but we created a process for content development that included the legal team in the process, as well as all the other disciplines. And we are now able to move forward faster. And I don't have to even do any of it.
That's the best part of it.
Yeah. So that's a kind of a simple example on how you can say no in a way that you're saying, yes, this is absolutely a valid point. No, I cannot do it the way that you're expecting. What about this other option? Or who would be best qualified to do that? And by saying that, what people hear you say is yes twice. They also hear you saying clearly, this is not my job to resolve.
Interesting. I don't know if this is you or just everyone in your field, but you almost have to have a PhD in psychology to do your job, because most people wouldn't go through the trouble that you did. Most people would have just shot off a nasty email like, bye-bye. I mean, how did you learn how to handle some of these things? Were you born like this, or was it just years of experience?
So in some ways, I would say all of the above. Probably.
Okay.
But I have taken lots of classes, read a lot of books in this area, but mostly I pay a lot of attention to what works and what doesn't. So I live in the lives of many organizations trying to move things forward and paying close attention to what are the causes that cause friction or stop progress. And it usually comes down to interpersonal friction, interpersonal conflict, or miscommunication, or misunderstanding of each other. So when you start honing into that, you realize the way that person answered this email or the way that this person conducted this meeting was either extremely productive or extremely unproductive, and look the consequences of that. So every phone call, every interaction, every situation, you can really pick up the cues that make it work or not work. There are, definitely books and things written about it. So you start putting these things together and creating a toolkit that when it comes specifically to what you brought up to our attention of how to prioritize in a, work smart,
not harder,
world that is full of competing priorities, you realize, okay, these are the skills, these are the tools that help you maneuver around that.
Yeah, I mean that's such a it's the communication. Growing up working in radio, the term you used to hear all the time is we're in the communication business, but we need to communicate better. Or there's various versions of that quote. But it's so funny how if you think about a lot of the problems that happen in companies, whether it has to do with maybe they're not hitting projections or the company's struggling, a lot of it has to just go down straight to the communication between people on the team, right?
Yeah. So I've been looking at trying to understand. So what are the sources for why things don't go as planned or as
Yeah.
desired? And I have found that there's at least 5 core reasons. You could say that all 5 are have communication touch points.
Hmm.
We were talking about lack of focus, which is
Mhm.
a very unique reason, but you also have low trust. Low trust is a distinctive, different reason why sometimes things don't work as planned. It's different than lack of focus, having too many priorities or competing priorities. You have simply distrust, conflict of interest. You question the motives. You also could have poor capability, like people just simply don't know how to do
Yeah.
something. Or you can have low engagement, like people are just not motivated to do it. Or low accountability. So people are not really accountable to accomplish something that is measurable. So as a result, they don't have to do it really.
Yeah.
So each one of these symptoms is treated in a very different and specific way to achieve the desired result. So you have to understand what are the root causes hindering performance and then address the problem at the source.
I guess this is sort of like in communication as well, but I think a lot of companies complain. I hear a lot about, their team members is they're all in different silos. They basically sit at their desk, they work on their one job, they don't interact with anybody else unless it means, bumping into them in the coffee room, but they're all just in their silos. And now, thanks to the pandemic, we've accelerated people working from home. So not only do you have people working in silos, but you have people working in silos miles apart from their own homes. If you came into an organization when they said, Juan, we need help with this, we've never had a full work from home environment. Before this, we were all working in silos anyway. How can I remedy the situation? How can I keep my team together and not working so separately?
Wow, that's a very good question. And I deal right now with several clients that are in the exact same scenario that you're describing. So the best practices I've seen are very intentional and planful communication, even as we use video conferencing as our primary way of interaction. What the leader has to do is in the past, when you have the option of seeing each other in the hallway or having in-person meetings where you can even get to know what's going on in people's lives and at the same time do business conversations, here you have to figure out how to conduct all that using this online format.
Mm.
And it's not easy to be intentional about it, but the best practices would be to still be able to hold meetings where people have a structured way to collaborating, because it's very easy on a video conference to have many people on mute the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to structurally create in your meeting a time for breakout sessions, a time for open discussion, a time for bringing out everyone's opinions and ideas. I've seen in this case, one of these clients, that they even do an online social hour,
Hmm.
a happy hour.
Yeah.
So after work hours, they just have an online forum where just people talk about what's going on in their lives and connect as individuals. They don't have the drinks probably,
Yeah.
or they could.
Well, they could, right? Who know?
Yeah, who knows? At least they don't have to drive home afterwards.
Right.
They're already home. So the idea is that you have the opportunities to still recreate much of the same structure that help you bring people together online. And when it comes to breaking down the silos, the same thing is true, that you can intentionally create cross-functional meetings where you discuss ways of collaborating and working together while you're apart.
So in a way, that really that leans all on leadership. As you come into a lot of these organizations, it seems like it's more of an organizational issue where you want to touch everyone involved. But when it comes to the communication of breaking down silos, it rests solely on leadership. That's what it sounds
Well,
like.
so leaders have always been responsible for setting direction and bringing up teams and helping teams work together. But we live in a world where the influencer is in many ways more influential than the formal leader. And the digital platforms allows influencers to have enormous reach. So if you think about it, you could be a formal leader or an informal leader and influence change using the same tools. Because in the past, if you think about it, the formal leader in the past had the corner office, had the secretary, and the executive assistant, and he had
the parking spot. He had all
parking
the
spot.
perks.
He had a lot of perks that says this person has power and has more power than the person sitting in the cubicle. Now everyone is interacting from a screen from their living room or their bedroom,
Right, yeah.
So it flattens the level playing field to the point that the person that has the most skill at social influencing using the available tools has power. And no longer corner office or parking lots are going to give you that perspective.
Yeah. So it's sort of like going back to your change champions. You have to find that person that is who believes in the culture of the company. They don't necessarily have to be a senior VP. They could be, just someone a little bit down the line, but they have that influence on people because they are inspired by the fact that this person's taking the initiative.
That's right. So currently I'm working with an organization that the current CEO and president of that organization a few years ago used to be one of the consultants in the team. And I was involved 5 years ago when this person was just in a consulting role. And this person kept raising up in a very positive way important strategic issues for the business. And the current partners were paying attention to that, but they were not sure how to resolve or address the problem. So he started taking the initiative to address these issues and resolve the problems and demonstrate how we can solve these things. As a result, he himself became a partner, and now he's the president and owner of this organization. So the interesting thing is that nobody necessarily said to this guy, you are going to be the future CEO of the company. But everyone could tell that by the actions and by the way that he was handling himself, and he was moving conversations forward and elevating the dialogue, and sometimes sensitive issues, even like succession issues around, ownership and things like that. He was able to orchestrate significant growth and rise in the organization through his ability to gain influence.
Were you surprised by that, or do you see a lot of that happening in companies now where you have people who aren't, deemed the leaders step up and just sort of take matters into their own hands?
I have found that most authority, even in complex organizations that have very well-defined bureaucracies, most authority is first assumed and then formally granted. So in other words, you could be hired to be a VP of sales, let's say. But if you don't act as the VP of sales, people would very quickly say, this person is more like a manager, a sales manager with a glorified title. On the other hand, if you are, let's say, a salesperson, but all of a sudden you start advancing the conversation to the point that you're acting as a VP of sales, people are going to say, guess what? I think that this person will be promoted and pretty soon will become a VP of sales because of how they present themselves, how they come across.
Well, that's great. Well, if you weren't already writing a book, Juan, I would say, Juan, you should write a book about all this stuff, but you already are. It's coming out. It's called Strategic Transformation, How to Deliver What Matters Most. And he's got a podcast coming out as well, Transformational Trends. His name is Juan Riboldi. Juan, thank you very much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio. Find out more at ForbesBooksRadio.com.